Motion has been made and seconded. You have a statement in support.
Yes, sir. I'd like to clarify two things if I could. First one is that this is a non-binding article, which means that it is mostly a vote to see what the general sentiment of the community present here tonight is towards this article, and is necessary to inform a formal proposal to the school committee with whom the ultimate decision regarding the school renaming rests. I stand before you tonight honored to represent the Board of Multicultural Bridge in support of this non-binding article to advance community dialogue for the renaming of Monument Valley Middle School in honor of Great Barrington's most famous native son, Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois. I'd like to point out that the campaign to rename the middle school for Dr. Du Bois is part of a multi-year, multi-pronged initiative to celebrate the life, work, and legacy of Dr. Du Bois, led by Gwendolyn Van Sant and Multicultural Bridge. This motion brought tonight is the result of conversations between Gwendolyn and Randy Weinstein with representatives of the school committee, the select board, and the school administration in order to gauge support for this initiative within the community. Throughout the celebrations of Dr. Du Bois's life over the past 2 years that the town has supported in celebrating his 150th anniversary, the subject of renaming the school in Dr. Du Bois's honor has repeatedly been voiced by community members. With Gwendolyn's tireless leadership and a diversity of community partners, we have arrived at this point today to honor Dr. Du Bois's legacy. And Gwendolyn wished she would be here, but she is in Pittsfield being honored as the Woman of Achievement Award by Berkshire Business and Professional Center. So I'd like to offer some history on Dr. Du Bois. He was born in Great Barrington, Massachusetts in 1868, only 3 years after the abolition of slavery. He graduated valedictorian from this high school, slightly different building. And with the town helping to cover the cost of his education, graduated from Fisk University in 1888. He then went on to be the first African-American to earn a PhD from Harvard University. He taught at various universities in the United States, founded the Niagara Movement, and wrote a number of scholarly books, including The Souls of Black Folks, as well as co-founding the NAACP. Throughout his life, Dr. Du Bois was a global scholar, an educator, writer, and civil rights activist. His work and scholarship were groundbreaking explorations of racism, the legacy of slavery, and opportunities for civil rights advancement both in the U.S. and abroad. More than 150 years after his birth, his life and work both inspire and inform economic, racial, and social justice policy and movements worldwide. W.E.B. Du Bois believed fervently in freedom and equal rights for all, regardless of race, gender, class, religion, or country of origin. He was a staunch advocate of economic justice, housing, rights, equal education, natural resource protection, and universal health care. All of these issues, prominent in our current political dialogue, were held up by Dr. Du Bois 100 years ago. As we gather here today in the most basic demonstration of democracy, we, the Board of Multicultural Bridge, ask you to consider the importance of renaming the school as part of a larger strategy to create a more welcoming community for all, by lifting up and showcasing the lives and accomplishments of the people of color who have shaped our culture and nation, starting right here in our own town. It is particularly fitting to name a school after Dr. Du Bois because of his passion for and commitment to the education of young people.
I'll keep the time under control. You are over this minute.
Okay. The Bridge Board of Directors stand wholeheartedly in support of this initiative, which advocates for publicly upholding the values we hold in our community for today's youth through honoring the life and work of Dr. Du Bois. School districts in New York, Maryland, North Carolina, Ohio, and California have already named local schools in honor of Dr. Du Bois, and the federal government has approved his appearance on the U.S. postal stamp twice. We hope that Great Barrington can join them in doing the same.
Thank you very much.
Tim McGarrish, 115 East Street. I'm a Great Barrington resident and volunteer with Multicultural Bridge. Having the opportunity to celebrate and learn about Dr. Du Bois in his hometown is a powerful and unique experience. I'm grateful to Gwendolyn Van Sant and Multicultural Bridge, along with Randy Weinstein of the Du Bois Center, for their work that has led to this renaming effort. One of the things I've learned through the now annual Du Bois Festival was about the relationship between Great Barrington and Du Bois. This relationship is one of the things that makes this place unique. Nowhere else in the world can claim this honor. Du Bois graduated valedictorian from our high school, and members of the community helped him pay for college. Throughout his writing, Du Bois recalls Great Barrington and even wrote an ode. God love thee, first home of my boyhood, Great Barrington, land of my fathers. When tragedy struck and members of his family passed away, Du Bois entrusted Great Barrington as their final resting place. In addition to the historical relationship between Du Bois and the town, one of the outcomes of the festival has been reconnection with his family. Du Bois and the town, his great-grandson, Jeff Peck, has supported and spoke at the festival to honor his great-grandfather. He's met with local school children, and when he heard about the renaming effort, he had this to say. W.E.B. Du Bois, the educator, freedom fighter, the ultimate humanitarian. I am proud to have his blood running through my veins. It is a no-brainer that a school should bear the name of my great-grandfather, Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois. Even if he weren't my grandfather, his accomplishments, especially in the field of education, are praiseworthy enough that a school in his hometown should bear his name and carry his legacy. I think that wholeheartedly, he was an educator. He always wanted to inspire people to see and understand their capabilities. I'd like to end on a personal note. This year was the birth of my first child, and I'd like him and all the children in our community to grow up in a town that holds up Du Bois for all his achievements. When he attends school, I want him to learn about everyone's history, the complexities and harm of race and racism in our country, and to feel proud that he lives in a town that embraces Du Bois' legacy. Thank you very much.
Erica Milkey, 13 East Street. I was born here in Great Barrington, but lived most of my life not knowing anything about Du Bois. And through travels through the United States and in college, meeting people that were studying Du Bois' work, I started to hear from other people that he was from where I'm from, and I had never learned about it by living here. I recently went on a road trip through the Midwest and went through towns that were named after Du Bois, past schools in other states named after Du Bois. It was astonishing to me that people come from all over the United States to visit Du Bois' hometown because of the amazing work he's done, the social sciences studies that he's founded. He created so many new fields of study, and all of these people are reading and learning about him, and we have very little ways of honoring him until very recently. My son, who's 9, is now learning about Du Bois, but it's not through school. He's learning about it through community efforts led by Multicultural Bridge and other organizations here in Great Barrington to honor Du Bois. I know that it's going to be part of the middle school curriculum to learn about Du Bois. I believe that they're developing some curriculum to integrate it into the middle school, so I think it's really fitting to honor Dr. Du Bois by renaming the middle school after him. Thank you.
June Johnson, 7 Alfred Road, Barrington. I'm going to be the opposition here, apparently. I won't get any applause. I have no opposition to Dr. Du Bois being honored. He's an illustrious member of our community. My discussion, my proposal is not that we ignore him, or we have several monuments, so to speak, to his name. However, one of the things that is very important today is STEM education. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's science, technology, mathematics, and engineering. It's very necessary for our students. We have also in Great Barrington an illustrious individual who exemplifies exactly STEM. And that's, I'm sorry, William Stanley Jr. He spent most of his youth with his grandparents here in Great Barrington. He also went to school here. He worked in Pittsburgh for Westinghouse, but poor health sent him back to Great Barrington and to his family home. He did all of his work much in Great Barrington or Pittsfield. What Stanley did was he developed transformer and distribution system for alternating current. So think of any time you plug anything in, any time you turn anything on, anytime your hospital uses its electricity. Most of that is due to those families. In fact, all over the world, his transformers are still being used. All design for transformers are being based on his design. So there's a great deal. When he went into the Engineering Hall of Fame, they said he was a genius who left his mark indelibly on the world. He, a little more by the way, he got married here in Barrington, had a job. He died here in Barrington in 1916. Definitely a Barrington person. He demonstrated his invention for the first time here in Barrington by lighting up Main Street, the first town in the world to have incandescent lighting and have it work. This is no mean achievement. And
Your time has expired. Are you making an amendment to change the name to?
what I'm saying is I'm making an amendment, I guess, that the town have a chance to look at all its options and all its choices before making a final decision. I don't know how to do that, but that's what I'd like to see.
One way is to vote no on this.
John Warren, 2 Brainerd Avenue. So just wanted to read this. Those familiar with the life and work of W.B. Du Bois know that he believed in democracy and held firmly America's founding principle of equality. He spent his life striving for what Martin Luther King would later call a revolution in, the carrying forward of the revolution initiated by our founding fathers to bring African Americans into the fold of equality. Over his long life, Du Bois tried to achieve his democracy for all in a variety of ways. Using his Harvard PhD and brilliant intellect, he tried scholarship, founding the discipline of sociology in America and producing the Philadelphia Negro and other groundbreaking studies. Described as a writer of majestic power, he exposed the evils of racism and the unfathomable sufferings of African Americans in the literary classics, The Souls of Black Folk and Dark Art. As an activist, he founded the NAACP and laid the foundation for the civil rights movement of the late 1950s and 1960s. But sadly, his research, writing, and activism produced only modest changes during his lifetime. Du Bois ultimately came to believe that racism and economic oppression went hand in hand, and that without a more just economic system, equality would forever remain beyond the reach of African Americans. This led him, like many other intellectuals and activists of his day, to embrace socialism and eventually join the American Communist Party at the age of 93. Looking back over nearly 60 years, we now know that while Du Bois' intentions were good, he was grossly mistaken in his estimation of communism. At the age of 93, Du Bois also left the United States for Ghana. It is important to appreciate, however, that America shunned Du Bois long before he expatriated himself. During the Red Scare of the 1950s, Du Bois was harassed, humiliated, and silenced by the House Committee on American Activities and the FBI. And as part of this effort, his books were removed from schools and libraries across the country to explain why most adults remain ignorant of Du Bois. I believe we would do well to do our part to ensure that the youth of today have the privilege of being inspired by Du Bois. Please vote to remain in school for Du Bois.
before you guys look at me and think something different, know me as one thing, a veteran. I'm a member of Post 81, 83 in Housatonic. I'm sure any of you who've read paper, Shopper's Guide, you've seen our testament and our feelings on the matter. But I'm not speaking on their behalf or any veteran's behalf. What I'm a little bit confused about is everything I understand about Mr. Bois is he preached, thank you, equality. And one thing I tell my son, 14 years old, attends these schools, much like I did, is equality means you look at everybody equal. Everybody's the same, each and every one of us. Nobody up there, nobody in this audience is any better than the next person. So I find it very hard to understand how we can sit here and say that Mr. Bois is that much more deserving, that he is better. If equality is what we seek, then why are we changing the name for one man? I can think of numerous names of veterans, men, women, men who died for this country, died for democracy, the democracy we stand and appreciate today. So how can we sit here and put one man above another? I believe that if we truly want to be a community, rather than separate and put one man on a pedestal, how about we appreciate all of us and everything we have already? Thank you.
Patrick Manell, 154 Main Street. We should be naming any buildings after human beings. They're all flawed. And more importantly, W.E. Du Bois practiced socialism and communism from 1927. He's a very dangerous man, and he wrote a eulogy for Joe Stalin. We should not be honoring him on any government property.
Jim Karen, 112 Lakeville Road. I believe that in the past, the town of Great Barrington missed the opportunity to honor Dr. Du Bois, partly out of misguided understanding of his being a radical. I think we can understand in the context of history that he has made a very important contribution and that his political decisions late in life can be forgiven. But I also wanted to speak to the woman who suggested William Stanley as another name. We have another school, Moneybrook. That could have therefore the name of W.E. Du Bois, but at the time he was thought to be too radical. So after we name the middle school W.E. Du Bois, let's consider renaming Moneybrook for William Stanley or for a veteran.
Terrence Chamberlain, 3 Magnolia Street, Great Barrington. Back when the new schools were built, there was a contest to name the schools. As I recall, part of that contest was no schools, neither of the schools are to be named after a person living or dead.
Charlie Plunges, 60 Bestride, Great Barrington here. I'm coming at it from a different point of view. My family hails from a small town outside of Vilnius, in Lithuania. It has been said, it is true, that Mr. Du Bois did not become a communist until late in his life. He had leanings. He was everything but communist and named by the end of World War I. At the end of World War I, Russia's communists decided to invade Lithuania. My great-grandparents were leaving one end of town as the communists were entering the other. They had to make a decision about their family. They sent my grandparents here to the United States to give it a chance. My great-parents, great-grandparents stayed and fought. They felt the communists. They had no love for them. My grandparents had no love for them. My father fought in World War II. He fought for a free society. Communism and freedom do not go hand in hand. Mr. Dr. Bois was the opponent of communism. He was a crony and friend of Joseph Stalin. Joseph Stalin was one of the worst dictators in the history of mankind. Historians credit him with killing anywhere from 20 to 60 million people. 20 to 60 million. In the late 1920s, he started the Ukraine. Basically, there was 6 to 8 million people just because there was supremacy. And we have a man here who praised and extolled the virtues of this man and what he stood for and what he created in Europe. So yes, he did a lot of good here. He certainly did. But look at the whole ball of works right there. That is a great indictment. That is a huge indictment of the individual. I mean, you can think of any of the dictators here. Choose one. And if there's someone in this town who said that they agreed with that individual and what he did, did not speak out against it, they're not trying to stop it. And then we come back here and we want to name a school after that individual. How come? Yes, he did a lot of good things. But he was one of others who did some unbelievably heinous things. 20 to 60 people. 16 million in one country. That is a lot. Did he speak out about it? I can't find any time that he spoke out against any of these things. I can find times where he extolled some. I can find times where he praised capitalism to a great degree, in great society. We want to use a school like this individual. Don't just look at the good. Consider the whole picture.
Any further discussion on this motion? Please, want to say something that hasn't been said before?
Yes. My name's Jeff Lowenstein. I'm at 1066 Main Street in Housatonic. I'm here as a volunteer at the Multicultural Bridge. And I just want to raise something that I think has not been raised yet, which is really crucial, which is that we have not treated people equally throughout our history. One of the things that I've been privileged to learn in my work with Bridge is the way in which we have not acknowledged the contributions of people in communities of color in advancing our work, the values of equality and integration in our society, some of the bedrock principles of our democracy in our society. And there are a few people who did quite so much to advance that discussion as W.E.B. Du Bois. Yes, he made some decisions that I think many of us disagree with, but if we're talking about what defined the man, what defined his life and his legacy, it is his tireless work for equality, for democracy, for integration. And I think that we owe it to all of our children and to our community to lift up that contribution, to acknowledge that we have, as a town, failed to honor that legacy and that has only recently been changing, and that we need to do a lot more to do that. I can say personally, for myself, I grew up in Sheffield and I didn't learn that W.B. Du Bois was from Great Barrington until I was in college. I think that's a problem. I think it's a deprivation for our youth, and I think it's something we need to change. Thank you.
Richard Combs, 41 Grove Street, Great Barrington. I spent 30 years as one of your representatives to the Berkshire Hills Regional School District Committee, and I had the privilege of chairing the building committee that oversaw the construction of both the elementary and the middle schools. And during that process, as Mr. Chairman said, there was a considerable amount of discussion regarding naming those schools. But our task when we set out to build those schools was to build the finest educational facilities we could for our youngsters. We built educational facilities, not memorials, and that's why we decided to name them as we had to represent the sites where they're located. If Great Barrington wants to memorialize Mr. Du Bois, that's fine. I have no problem with them doing that. Just it should not be through a regional school district building.
Garfield Reed, 107 Castle Hill Avenue, Great Barrington. I think it's important that if we even do not name the school after them, we keep them foremost in our education and teaching of the kids in the school. As a black man, I can tell you, at one point, it's very hard for a black person to be accepted in America if you're not white. Where I grew up, they're saying if you're brown, stick around. If you're white, you're all right. If you're black, you better get back. Well, it's been hard to be accepted probably in 1927. And if you're not accepted, then you're going to turn to someone who's going to accept you. And maybe all the ideas weren't correct and everything he did was not correct, but you have to understand, this is how America is and was and still is to some degree. And it needs to change, and we need to recognize the man who's done to do.
Alfred Brewer, 15 South Street. So just a couple of points I want to add to a lot of the great discussion. In regards to the contest, I was actually in the 5th grade for that contest, and we were in fact encouraged to select specific historical figures from Great Barrington. I wrote an essay about Mom and Dad. That's the person I proposed. I'm not going to make an amendment or anything. I think it was fine. But I remember when they did make the decision to basically not take any of our suggestions that we worked hard on. 2 paragraphs is hard for a 5th grader. I saw it as cowardly. It seemed strange to me that any kind of controversy at all the town was just afraid to take a stand and put their support behind someone. If you look at any historical figure, they have controversy. Thomas Jefferson literally owned slaves, and I think there isn't a lot of hesitation about naming things after him. And I don't want to make any direct accusations, but it does seem that when someone is black or of color, those scandals have a lot more weight for whatever reason. People get a lot more up in arms about any kind of potential controversy about that person. I also want to point out, just, it's been touched on, but when people talk about the supposed bad things that Du Bois did or said, we really should put that in context. He dealt with the House Committee on American Affairs, I don't know, probably some of the people actually on un-American activities, right? That was one of the most un-American things that our country has ever done. When we talk about his supposed communism, if you skim the Wikipedia article, as I did before I came, because I didn't learn about it in school, he said something to the effect of, "I am not a communist." However, I think Karl Marx has touched on something important, and I think the USSR is hopeful, specifically because they eschewed racial distinctions. He ended up being wrong, specifically about the USSR being hopeful. He was not wrong about Karl Marx if you actually take the time to read him. And regardless, the opportunity to explore ideas and be wrong is a big part of what being an American is. It is not I have 25 seconds, so the last thing I'm going to say is no one's really touched on the fact that it's not just about honoring Du Bois. It's about taking pride in something that our town produced and something and that we should look to produce more someone from a disadvantaged background who was able to experience an enormous amount of success and do a lot of good.
May I suggest that you try to limit it to 2 minutes?
I'll make it shorter. I'll make it shorter than that. The House on Un-American Activities. My name is Phil Prima. I live on Monument Valley Road, right near the school, and I would love to see the school named that as I pass it every day. I think it's an important thing to do. But I want to correct one thing that was said that seems to get said over and over again about communism and about person's allegiance, and there's some pieces that were left out. First of all, our dear Senator McCarthy tried to do a job on this esteemed gentleman, and he stopped. He did not do it. And why did he not do it? Because Albert Einstein wrote a letter and sent it. And the letter talked about why this gentleman was beyond reproach in terms of being crucified as a communist or as un-American. And Senator McCarthy did not pursue it because of that letter. So we don't know. I don't know what was in that letter, but it was clear because they were very good friends. Now, this gentleman also stood for anti-nuclear peace, and he was given several awards. And in the same vein as he's also listed with Nelson Mandela as one of the people who got the same award. And I think this gentleman should receive an honor from our town. And if you can come up with a better honor, I'll support that. But I think this is a damn good honor, and I think we should do it.
Hi, I'm Emily Olds. I live at 6 Depot Street in Housatonic. I was an English teacher here at Monument for 12 years, and one of my favorite books to teach was To Kill a Mockingbird. I'm sure many of you read that when you were in high school. That book is based on an actual trial called the Scottsboro trial, in which 9 African American boys were falsely accused of raping a white woman. This was during the Great Depression. The only lawyers that would take that case were communist lawyers, because no white American lawyers would defend 9 black young men. Many black people were attracted to communism during this time period because, as Albert pointed out, they espoused racial equality. Many people were wrong about communism. I was also a history teacher here for 7 years. I taught U.S. history. There's a time period in 1919 known as the Red Summer. It's called the Red Summer because thousands of black men, women, and children were murdered in riots across the United States. And many of these riots were brought about by the returning black soldiers coming home from World War I. Du Bois was very concerned with these black veterans and the way that they were being treated. Black veterans were literally being lynched in uniform because they dared to walk the streets of their towns in uniform, asking to be treated with full citizenship rights. They were lynched for that. So I am very supportive of all of our veterans, and it is also true that we have not treated our black citizens with equality in the past, and any interest in communism or socialism that Dr. Du Bois may have had is somewhat understandable given the fact that we did not live up to our promises to black people for a very long time. So I am all in favor of naming the school after Du Bois.
I'm warned that the babysitters we're supposed to have been finished at 8 o'clock.
I'll be really quick. My name is Annie Almquist. I live at 219 South Street. And I just wanted to thank the veterans who are here for their service. And I wanted to also thank everyone who's brought this proposal in front of us, because I think it's important to remember that, you know, this great nation was founded on an idea that all men are created equal, yet at that time we held men and women in bondage. And unraveling that dissonance has been part of our personal growth as a nation. So I don't think that while I appreciate the concern and the affront that this might feel to the veterans, I just want to point out that these two ideas, having a strong love for our country and also supporting a Black man who pointed out the ridiculousness of our system and is helping us to solve that deep pain that dissonance is for all of us then and still is now. I don't think those things are incompatible, and I hope that we can find a way as a community to respect our veterans and to respect Du Bois at the same time.
Thank you very much. 17 speakers at this motion. I believe we are ready for a vote. Motion for secret ballot was made at the microphone, and there's nobody at the microphone making a motion. I'll give you 5 seconds, Patrick.
I move for a secret ballot.
Is there a second? Is there a second? That has been seconded. All those in favor of taking a secret ballot on this, raise your hand. Raise your cards. Those opposed? Motion fails. The vote the principal motion now, the advisory motion concerning the naming of the middle school for W.B. Du Bois. All those in favor, raise your cards. Those opposed? Motion carries.